You know, usually when we talk about launching a projectile into the air, there is uh, this expectation of clinical engineered precision.
Right, like totally calculated.
Exactly. Like if you're launching a rocket into orbit, you punch the coordinates into a computer, the thrusters ignite with exact mathematical symmetry, and the trajectory is just locked in. It's incredibly comforting because, the math just works.
Right. As long as the inputs are correct, the output is practically binary.
Yeah, but then you step onto the tee box of a long par 5.
Okay.
You've got a driver in your hands, and suddenly that precision computer is replaced by a highly volatile mix of bone, muscle, and, let's be honest, a severe amount of adrenaline.
Oh, a lot of drop.
We're looking at a physical landscape that is just inherently unstable. If you're listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone listening has been there.
You're trying to hit a golf ball consistently longer and straighter, which is basically the universal dream for anyone who has ever picked up a club. But one tiny misalignment, 1 millimeter of error at the bottom of your swing, and that perfectly planned rocket launch turns into a chaotic slice deep into the trees.
Yeah, it really is the absolute definition of a biomechanical high-wire act. I mean, when you actually look at the raw data of a golf swing, the margins for error aren't just small. They are genuinely terrifying.
They really are, and that is exactly what we are getting into today. We have a massive stack of sources to go through for this deep dive.
A huge stack.
We are unpacking everything from PGA professional coaching manuals and data pulled straight from 3D biomechanics labs, all the way to, cutting-edge sports science journals.
The research is fascinating.
It is. Our mission today is to bridge the gap. We want to take all this advanced kinematic theory, the really heavy physics and biology, and connect it directly to what you're actually doing on the golf course to perform better.
Because there's just a staggering amount of noise out there. If you scroll through YouTube looking for swing advice, you'll find 100 different contradictions.
Oh, easily. It's overwhelming.
But when you strip away the myths, when you look at the actual physics of impact and the 3D motion data, a very clear, undeniable blueprint emerges of what actually matters.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the moment of truth. Let's talk about the physics of impact, because before we even get into how the shoulders turn or the hips fire, we have to understand what the golf ball actually cares about during that 1 millisecond of collision.
That is the perfect place to start. And what the ball cares about is largely governed by the 80-20 rule.
The 80-20 rule, okay.
Yeah. So when you have a driver in your hands, which typically has somewhere between, say, 8 and 11 degrees of loft, the physical orientation of the club face at the moment of impact accounts for a massive 80% of the ball's initial starting direction.
Wow.
The path that the club head is traveling on only dictates about 20%.
Wait, hold on. 80%. Because if you listen to amateur golfers on the driving range, they're obsessing entirely over their swing path.
Entirely.
You constantly hear people asking, am I swinging too far inside out? Am I coming over the top? But you're saying the face angle completely dominates the path.
By a landslide. I mean,
Yeah.
the club face is the primary deflector of the ball's mass. Think about the collision. You have a high-speed metal object striking a stationary urethane ball.
Right.
The ball is going to ricochet perpendicular to the solid surface it hits. And if you look at professional long drive competitors, the guys who are using drivers with only 4 degrees of loft.
Which looks basically flat.
Basically flat, yeah.
Yeah.
The club face influence actually spikes up to 83 or even 85% for those guys.
That's incredible.
So the lower the loft, the more the face dictates the launch direction. So the absolute foundation of keeping your ball on the golf course is face control. If you can simply deliver the club face square to your target line, your longest drives will consistently be in play, almost regardless of your swing path.
That makes total sense when you break down the geometry of a collision. But it isn't just the angle of the face that matters, right? It's exactly where on the face you make contact, the sweet spot.
Yes, the exact center of gravity.
Let's use an analogy here. Think about hitting a baseball.
Okay.
If you connect with a fastball dead on the sweet spot of a wooden bat, it feels like butter.
Yeah.
You barely feel the impact because all the energy transfers perfectly into the ball.
Right. It's effortless.
But if you hit that exact same pitch off the very end of the bat violently twists in your hands, it vibrates up to your elbows, and the ball just flutters away into the infield.
That is the exact mechanism at play with the driver. Missing the sweet spot, the center of gravity on the club face, by even half an inch, introduces a massive amount of structural twist to the club head.
Really? Just half an inch?
Just half an inch. High-speed, slow-motion cameras show this beautifully. When you strike the golf ball on the toe or the heel, The immense force of the impact actually causes the entire club head to rotate around its center of gravity while the ball is still compressed against the face.
But don't modern drivers have a built-in fix for that? Like they're built with curved faces, right?
Yeah, that bulge and roll gear effect.
Right, that gear effect that's specifically engineered to correct those mishits and bend the ball back toward the center.
They do, and the gear effect certainly helps mitigate minor errors. But if the mishit is significant enough, the physical twisting of the club head completely overpowers any corrective spin that engineers have built into the club.
Oh, so the twist just wins.
It wins every time. If you miss it off the heel, the face twists closed and the ball gets violently pulled. Catch it off the extreme toe, the face twists open and it gets pushed. The raw physics of that twist simply dominates the design of the club.
Which brings up a really brilliant strategic application from our sports science journals. Let's talk about Dustin Johnson playing in a U.S. Open.
That's a great example.
The fairways at a U.S. Open are basically tightropes, maybe 30 or 35 yards wide, bordered by incredibly thick rough. Dustin Johnson is a superstar, one of the longest, most athletic hitters on the planet. But even he will actively choose to trade his maximum distance for a larger margin of error off the tee.
It's a brilliant course management based on physics. By increasing the loft on his driver by just 1 single degree, he might sacrifice 10 yards of total carry distance.
Which hurts the ego a bit.
Sure. He drops from hitting at 325 yards to 315 yards. But that added loft changes the collision dynamics. It introduces more backspin to the golf ball.
And backspin acts as a stabilizer.
Exactly. Backspin stabilizes the ball's flight axis. It dramatically reduces the horizontal curvature, the slicing or hooking caused by those minor face angle errors or slight off-center strikes we just talked about.
Wow.
The ball stays on line much better, and because of the steeper landing angle, it won't roll out as far into the rough when it finally hits the ground.
You willingly give up 10 yards of ego, but you actually find the short grass and have a shot at the green. It's a literal balancing act between physics and scoring.
It really is.
But to actually deliver that club face squarely and generate that kind of speed, we have to look at the engine powering the whole operation, the human body. The 3D Motion Lab data in these sources has completely revolutionized how we analyze the swing.
It is a totally different world now. We've largely moved beyond standard 2D video analysis, which honestly can actually be incredibly deceiving.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, if a camera is positioned even 2 inches off center, a swing path can look artificially steep or dangerously inside.
Oh, just from the lens angle.
Exactly. But in a 3D motion lab, physical sensors track the exact spatial position and rotation of the golfer's joints in real time. We're measuring what biomechanics call the 6 degrees of freedom.
The 6 degrees of freedom. I love that. It sounds like a sci-fi movie title, but it's purely mechanical.
It's just mapping geometry in a 3D space. There are 3 linear movements. Sway, which is side-to-side motion along the target line. Thrust, which is front-to-back motion moving toward or away from the golf ball.
Oh.
And lift, which is up and down vertical motion.
Got it.
Then you pair those with 3 angular movements. Bend, which is tilting your torso forward or backward. Side bend, tilting from your trail side to your lead side. And turn, which is the actual rotation of your body.
Most amateur golfers focus entirely on just the turn, right? They just try to twist their shoulders as hard as they can.
Yes, and that's a huge mistake.
But measuring all 6 degrees is how scientists uncovered the actual holy grail of generating power, which is the kinematic sequence.
Yes, the kinematic sequence is the biomechanical term for the summation of speed.
Summation of speed. Explain that for us.
So if you want to maximize the velocity of the club head at the exact moment of impact, the energy must transfer efficiently from the massive proximal segments of your body, like your core and torso out, to the smaller distal segments, which are your arms and wrists.
Okay.
And it has to happen in a highly specific sequenced order.
It goes pelvis, then thorax, then the late arm, and finally the club.
Correct. The downswing is initiated by the pelvis changing direction and rotating aggressively toward the target. Then the thorax, or your chest, fires. Then the late arm accelerates. And finally, all that energy is released into the club shaft.
So it just ripples outward.
Exactly. But the secret isn't just that they fire in order. It's that each segment accelerates to its absolute peak speed, and then it rapidly decelerates.
Decelerates, like hitting the brakes.
Yes, that heartbreaking action is what transfers its momentum into the next segment in the chain, multiplying the speed.
I want to push back on this, or rather, really clarify it, because proximal to distal energy transfer sounds great in a lab, but it doesn't help you much when you're standing over a ball.
That's fair.
If I just try to rip my pelvis open as fast as I can, my arms usually get stuck 3 feet behind my body and I slice the ball into the parking lot. How does clearing the hips actually transfer energy to the club instead of just leaving it miles behind?
That is the trap most amateurs fall into. You are missing the deceleration phase. If your hips just spin endlessly without stopping, you're right, your arms get completely trapped behind you. Think your body like a bullwhip.
Okay, a whip?
If you hold a heavy whip and you just move your hand forward at the exact same speed as the tip, you get absolutely zero snap. The whip just drags through the air.
Right.
To get that violent crack at the end, you have to aggressively move the handle forward, and then you have to anchor it. You snap your wrist to a sudden halt. That violent stop is what forces the wave of energy to travel all the way down the leather to the very tip.
That is a phenomenal analogy. So in the golf swing, the pelvis is the handle of the whip.
Exactly.
When the pelvis fires open and then stabilizes, when the muscles brace and hit the brakes, it acts as an anchor.
And that anchoring creates an incredible stretch in the core muscles connecting the pelvis to the thorax. This is known in sports science as the X factor stretch.
The X factor stretch. This is the dividing line between amateur swings and elite professional power, isn't it?
It is the defining hallmark. During the transition from the backswing into the downswing, an elite golfer's pelvis has already changed direction. It's actively rotating forward toward the target, while their upper back, shoulders, and the club are still completing their backward rotation.
Oh, so they're moving in opposite directions for a split second.
Yes, that opposing twisting motion creates a massive stretch-shortened cycle in the muscle tissue of the torso. Think of it exactly like pulling back a heavy elastic band. You're storing deep elastic potential energy in the muscles.
And then it just snaps.
Exactly. When those muscles finally fire, they contract with vastly more force and speed than if you just tried to turn your hips and shoulders together from a static, paused position.
Okay, so if we know the perfect sequence of how the body generates speed, why do so many swings fall apart before the club even gets near the ball? Let's look at swing planes.
Good transition.
The sources discuss the stark difference between a flat swing and an upright swing. Jim Hardy famously popularized this with his one-plane versus two-plane concepts. You look at guys on tour like Matt Kuchar, who has a very flat merry-go-round type of swing, and then you see Jim Furyk with that incredibly steep, upright Ferris wheel action.
And the data shows both can obviously win on the PGA Tour. But a flatter swing, where the arms swing lower and more around the body, is often much easier for everyday players to master.
Because it's a simpler motion.
Yeah, it relies heavily on simple horizontal body rotation. And crucially, a flat swing naturally promotes swinging the club from the inside out, which is fantastic for generating raw speed and hitting a powerful draw.
But there's a massive trap hiding in a flat swing, isn't there?
A huge one. What the 3D data highlights is how incredibly fast flat turns into too shallow.
Too shallow, meaning what?
When your swing gets too shallow on the way down, the club head drops too far behind your body. It essentially gets stuck. And geographically, that shifts the low point of your entire swing arc backward, physically behind the golf ball.
And when the lowest point of your swing is behind the ball, the club head is going to crash into the ground before it ever reaches the urethane.
Exactly. Hello, chunked fat shots that go 10 yards. Or the club comes into the ball from so incredibly far inside that your brain panics, your hands take over, and you violently flip the face closed at the last second, resulting in a snap hook.
That is exactly the sequence of failure for so many players. And when we look at the biomechanical faults associated with the swing that has gotten too shallow, we almost always see the body compensating with thrust.
Right, which is early extension.
That's when the golfer's hips move closer to the ball and they stand up completely out of their posture right before impact, just to make room for the stuck club.
Yeah, we also see sway, where the pelvis slides laterally forward toward the target instead of properly rotating open. The body is just desperately trying to save the shot.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do you fix a swing that desperately wants to roll too flat and get stuck? This is where the coaching manuals get really cool. Our sources explored David Ledbetter's a swing backswing concept.
The A-swing. It's completely counterintuitive when you first hear it, but the physics behind it are brilliant.
Yeah, he advocates for keeping the hands in close to the body while pushing the club head out and away from you during the takeaway.
It's a very deliberate anti-flat mechanic. I mean, many amateurs pick up a club and instantly roll their wrists inside, dragging the heavy club head behind their back way too early. Leadbetter's approach forces the club head to stay outside the hands.
So by the time you reach the top of the swing, the club shaft is actually pointing somewhat steeply to the right of the target.
Yes. He calls it an inverted feel. It feels wrong to the player.
It does feel strange, but the geometry of it is ingenious. From that slightly steep across the line position at the top, gravity just takes over.
It does. As the lower body initiates the kinematic sequence and begins to turn, the center of mass of the club naturally causes it to drop backward onto a perfect, slightly shallower plane on the downswing.
It physically prevents the club from getting trapped behind the player's back.
Exactly. It uses the rotational transition to shallow the club automatically, rather than forcing the player to consciously manipulate it with their hands.
Which perfectly sets us up to talk about the hands. And frankly, this is the most mind-blowing piece of data in this entire deep dive. We've established that the body creates this massive wave of energy through the kinematic sequence,
Yeah.
but all that power is completely useless if the club face is open at impact. So let's talk about the actual steering wheel of the golf swing, the lead arm and the wrists.
If there is one single metric you should take away from the 3D biomechanical data, it's this. The best ball strikers in the world rotate their lead arm twice as much as amateur golfers during the downswing,
Twice as much.
and they initiate that rotation significantly earlier in the sequence.
That is a staggering difference. If you've ever stood on the range and realized you are violently flipping your wrist at the very bottom, just praying the club face squares up at the last microsecond, you know exactly how inconsistent that feels. Why are amateurs getting this so wrong?
It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of the anatomy required to square the club face. Many amateurs get to the top of their backswing, and their lead wrist, the left wrist for a right-handed player, is heavily cupped.
Meaning the knuckles are bent backward toward the top of the forearm.
Exactly. And structurally, a cupped wrist forces the club face to fan wide open.
So as they start their downswing with an open face, their nervous system subconsciously realizes the geometry is wrong.
Right, they panic. They intuitively know that if they just keep rotating their body, they'll hit the ball entirely sideways, so they stop turning their core, stall their momentum, and try to slap their hands at the ball at the very last millisecond to square the face.
Which is completely dependent on timing, and it breaks down instantly under pressure.
Instantly. To fix this panic flip, the sports science journals say golfers must feel the knuckles of their lead hand moving away from the forearm during the transition, bowing or flexing the wrist.
The analogy used in the coaching manuals here, the hack motion motorcycle drill, is just brilliant.
Oh, it's so good.
I want everyone listening to picture this. Imagine you're gripping the throttle of a motorcycle with your lead hand at the top of your swing. As you start the downswing, you rev the engine. You violently twist that throttle downward.
Yeah, revving that imaginary throttle naturally flexes or bows the lead wrist, and physically, that simple anatomical movement automatically closes the club face early in the downswing.
It locks the face in square before you even get near the ball.
It does. And because the face is already structurally squared up by that early wrist flexion, your brain doesn't panic. You don't have to flip your hands at the bottom. You can just aggressively rotate your core and let the kinematic sequence unleash all that power through impact.
And as you rotate through, there is this great visual cue mentioned in the PGA manuals that I think is super helpful for anyone trying to visualize this. It's the concept of supination through impact.
Supination, right, that's just the technical anatomical term for the outward rotation of the forearm.
And the visual cue is incredibly simple. Look at the logo or the Velcro patch on the back of your golf glove.
Exactly. If you're supinating correctly, by the time you swing through impact and finish your rotation, that patch on your glove should have rotated a full 180 degrees until it's pointing directly behind you.
So halfway down, the glove patch is pointing at the target line, and by the time you follow through, it's pointing behind you. That is a massive amount of forearm rotation.
It is a massive amount, but it is physically required to stabilize the club face. The steering wheel analogy you used earlier is perfect. Your lead arm is the steering wheel. If the Velcro patch on your glove is pointing to the right at the moment of impact, your club face is pointing right, and you are slicing the ball.
You must actively rotate that lead arm to square the face.
Yes.
Okay, so let's bring this all down to earth. If you're listening to this and you are heading to the driving range in an hour, how do you take the physics of the 80-20 rule, the complexity of the kinematic sequence, and the mechanics of lead wrist flexion, and actually tweak your swing tonight? Let's talk about some actionable adjustments.
Well, the coaching data outlines a few very practical self-organization tweaks. These are ways to organically alter your swing path without having to spend 6 months overhauling your entire mechanical motion.
Okay, what is the lowest hanging fruit? If I just want to change my path without overthinking it, where do I start?
You start with your alignment. Shifting your foot stance by just 10 degrees alters your baseline swing path relative to the target line.
So if you're struggling with a slice.
Exactly. If you want to swing more from the inside out to hit a draw, aim your feet and shoulders slightly closed, which means aiming to the right for a right-handed golfer. Your body will naturally swing along that new, closed baseline.
What about altering my arm position? Does how high I lift my arms change the path?
Absolutely. The position of your lead arm at the top of the swing is a tremendous tangible checkpoint. If you stop at the top and look at your lead arm, its elevation relative to your shoulder plane dictates a lot of the downswing geometry.
Right.
A flatter lead arm that sits lower and deeper across your chest naturally promotes an in-to-out path on the way down, structurally biasing a draw. Conversely, a steeper, higher lead arm naturally promotes an out-to-in path, which biases a fade.
Okay, but what if I don't want to mess with my posture or my arm height? Is there a way to shallow out the club path using just my hands in the transition like we talked about with the A swing?
Yes, and that's where hand loops come into play.
Hand loops.
Yeah, if you feel like your hands loop slightly under or shallower in the initial transition down from the top, you physically shift the center of mass of the club. That shifts the low point of the swing forward, past the ball, and shallows out your attack angle. It ensures you compress the ball first and then take the turf.
It's incredible how much deep physics and geometry goes into making a tiny white ball fly straight. But it really all comes back to managing those physical tolerances we talked about at the start.
It does. And analyzing all this torque and power actually raises a deeply important question, one that is heavily explored in the sports science thesis we reviewed from the University of Johannesburg.
Oh, right.
I think it's the perfect concept to leave you pondering today.
Lay it on me.
We've talked extensively about the kinematic sequence and generating speed through the X-factor stretch. To create tour-level velocity, the modern golf swing requires the body to generate massive torque by firing the pelvis violently forward while the upper body is still resisting backward.
Right, winding up that human elastic band to its absolute limit.
But I want you to think about the actual physical mechanism, the neuropathophysiciology, of what is happening to the human spine there. The golf swing is a highly asymmetrical, intensely violent physical motion.
I mean, you were twisting pretty hard.
You're locking your lower spine in place and violently twisting your upper torso against it thousands upon thousands of times a year in only one direction. This intense, uneven pressure literally builds up asymmetrical muscle mass on just one side of your body.
Wait, really?
Yes, specifically in deep, stabilizing muscles, like the quadratus lumborum in the lower back.
Wait, so because you only swing right-handed or left-handed, you are literally building up thick muscle mass on one side of your lower spine while the other side stays normal.
Exactly. You are structurally changing your anatomy. So the provocative thought is this. As we push kinematic science to its absolute limits, chasing maximum club head speed and 350-yard drives, are we approaching an era where targeted physical therapy, asymmetrical body conditioning, and injury prevention are actually more important to hitting the ball far than the swing mechanics themselves?
Wow.
Because if your spinal structures can't handle the sheer violence of the X-factor stretch, having the perfect swing plane simply won't save you.
That changes the entire perspective on training. It goes right back to the very first thing we discussed. You're trying to launch a precision rocket, but your launch pad is made of living bone and muscle.
Exactly.
And if that asymmetrical launch pad cracks under the intense pressure of the swing, your rocket isn't going anywhere.
It is a harsh structural reality that you just cannot ignore, no matter how perfect your wrist flexion or your swing path might be.
That is absolutely fascinating, and it gives us a ton to think about the next time we're stretching out on the first tee box. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our channel and share it with fellow golfers, coaches, and PGA professionals.
Please do.
If there is a topic you would like us to research, analyze, and discuss in a future episode, feel free to send us an email or connect with us through LinkedIn.
We're always looking for new ideas.
Whether your interest is golf biomechanics, kinematics, ground reaction forces, swing mechanics, putting, coaching, club fitting, technology, or sports science, we would love to hear from you. Our team will review your submission, conduct extensive research, analyze the available evidence, and may create a dedicated podcast episode, article, video, or testing project based on your topic.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for being part of the eCoach 360-degree community.